Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Frank Baia. I have the distinction of being a member of the Technology Association of Georgia's Entertainment Society, and of course, like all of our other former board members and a lot of our technology members that are here today, we welcome all of the members of the entertainment industry. There are many reasons why the entertainment industry in Georgia is winning the arms race to land Hollywood movies and television series. It's also recognized as one of the most extensive music industries in the country, if not the globe. It's also recognized as a rapidly expanding computer game development and digital media entertainment industry. Now, obviously, it would be the stunning impact of our state's pioneering incentives to lure business. Some experts say it's the most comprehensive tax incentive program in the country. But hey, wait a minute. Georgia has, well, a not-so-secret weapon in this megawatt economic development battlefield, a long, deep history of talented people who over some 80 years plus have come before and forged a path for all future generations to follow, the icons of the entertainment industry. That is today a broad network of evolving infrastructure of production and recording facilities, a talented workforce, interactive media developers, and yes, a growing, even empowered entertainment technology industry and world-class support services. Icons of the Georgia entertainment industry. Yes, Georgia and Atlanta have a long, deep history of talented people that have created a sense of identity and place for Georgia that our nation and the world have finally come to recognize as one of the globe's top entertainment industry innovation and leadership meccas. Let's have a round of applause for what we've achieved. Today, the Technology Association of Georgia, the TAG Entertainment Society, and the United Entertainment Industry of Atlanta and the state of Georgia, who join us here today, come to recognize the 2013 icon of the entertainment industry. Truly an easy thing to say, the one and only Joel Katz. Atlanta founding shareholder, Atlanta co-managing shareholder emeritus, chair global entertainment and media practice at Greenberg Traurig. Former chairman of the American Bar Association Entertainment and Sports Law Section. A global leader in the field of entertainment law, Joel's clients include some of the world's most well-known entertainers, music producers, record companies, concert promoters, Fortune 500 companies, and more. More than 30 years ago, he founded his law firm, which became one of the country's largest music entertainment law firms. In 1998, Joel merged the practice with Greenberg Traurig. Before we welcome Joel to share his amazing pioneering path through Atlanta and the world's entertainment history in a unique informal conversation, consider this recent video accolade presented at one of dozens and dozens he has received over decades from peers and organizations. This one in particular from an alumni association from the City University of New York at Hunter College, where, by the way, he's a member of the College Hall of Fame.
Pick a star, choose a celebrity, and chances are Joel Katz played a part in putting them on top.
Joel is a consummate people person.
Joel personifies the entrepreneurial spirit.
Joel's charismatic. He uplifts everybody who's around him.
Joel, in a way, represents everyone.
And he's just a genuinely good guy.
He's as good as it gets, and not just in his profession, but as a human being.
That's the kind of guy you want for your lawyer.
As one of the country's most influential entertainment lawyers, his list of clients is a who's who of who's hot.
Joel represents practically everybody I know in the music business.
He's loved and admired by so many people, so many places.
I simply said to him, I want a lawyer who will actually talk to me on the phone. And he made me that promise then. And this day has kept it.
Joel is a dynamic figure within the entertainment law community.
He's a tremendous family guy, and he is all about his colleagues and his friends, and that transcends into his desire, people that are aspiring to be in his business.
But for Joel, giving back is bigger than any gold record.
Joel not only gives a lot, Joel raises a lot. Joel is totally committed to certain causes, particularly education, particularly giving people a chance that he feels would not have had a chance.
It's a really wonderful feeling to know that you did something good to someone you really don't know. You feel their innocence.
He sits on the board of trustees for the Grammy Foundation, a scholarship for music education.
The Grammy Foundation supports initiatives to bring young people into the music community and to support music education within public and other secondary schools.
The Joel A. Katz Law Library at the University of Tennessee and the innumerable foundations he's been part of demonstrate a commitment to helping those who need it most.
When Joel was in college, he remembers what it was like to have to work while he was paying attention to his studies. So he's provided a special scholarship.
And he gives them to the ones that really you might think wouldn't deserve it, which is the low 10% of the class.
My theory was the rabbit or the hare never wins the race. They run out of juice. The tortoise will always win the race because I was a tortoise.
Which is a very unique way of giving scholarships, but that's who he is.
But despite all the success, this humble kid from the Bronx never forgot his roots.
Well, he's very proud that he graduated from Hunter College, and he doesn't forget what people did for him.
I think that Joel is a great example of someone who has really built this dream himself.
I'm not surprised that Joel's being honored for this achievement award. I think he looks generally for the good in people.
He is committed to really leaving a legacy of giving and helping people.
There's nothing he wouldn't do.
Let's go for another 30, Joel.
All I can say is that I want to congratulate Hunter College for recognizing this great man.
I can think of no one more deserving and no one more capable. And may we do this again for another 30 years.
Joe, you're the best. You're the best. You're the best.
Ladies and gentlemen, motion pictures and television entertainment law's best lawyer in America, lawyer of the year, and listed in Billboard Magazine's Power 100 and Variety's 50 game-changing attorneys. Let's have a welcome for Mr. Joel Katz. One of the things that I think is important is the curiosity about how music and law come together, number one. And then I guess number two would be James Brown. How did that all happen, and how did it begin?
Well, I'm from New York City. I was brought up in Queens, and I needed a scholarship to go to college. So I went to a place called Hunter College, which is part of the City University of New York. Managed to graduate while working through school, and needed a scholarship to law school. And two schools gave me a scholarship, the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks, North Dakota.
I could see that.
And the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. So it was not a big choice where to go. I went where it was warm. I went to Tennessee. And after Tennessee, I came to Atlanta because I got my first job, which was at the Department of Housing and Urban Development there. And this is kind of a long response, but I think it's an interesting story, and it tells how people get into a business with no real planning or sense, so it might be interesting to your group.
Go ahead.
And, you know, I came here and I worked for HUD, and I didn't know anyone in Atlanta when I came here, not one person, and I met a fellow named Noah Langdale who had a dream and was starting a school in downtown Atlanta, a college called Georgia State University. He had two buildings at the time, and he asked me to teach a course in urban law, which we designed and built. And I started teaching and also worked late at night for a fairly large Atlanta law firm learning how to write. So I had 3 jobs. And after 2 years of 3 jobs, it got a little crazy. So I quit all 3 jobs and opened an office, which was probably about the size of the table we're sitting at. I had shared an assistant with 4 different lawyers, and The overhead was very small, and I had no clients. And for the first 3 weeks of my practice, I had absolutely no clients. And then I got a phone call that basically changed my life the 4th week that I was in law practice. A guy calls me up, he says, "My name is Fred Davis. I'm a banker at the First National Bank of Atlanta at 2 Peachtree Street. I took your course at Georgia State, and I loved it. It was great. I learned a lot because it was so practical." I said, "Well, that's great." He says, "Are you looking for clients? Because I think I have a great client for you." I said, "Yeah." Considering I had no clients, I was looking for any clients. And I was worried about making a living. So he said, "You got to meet this guy. He's in town. Do you know anything about entertainment law?" Well, and this was in 1971, before most of you here were even born. And I said, "No, I don't know anything about entertainment law," because there were no books at that time about entertainment law, because I went that night to the Emory University Law Library to check, and there was nothing. He said, "Okay, that's exactly what the client wants. The client lives in Augusta, Georgia, and New York City, and he wants a lawyer who's living in the South and knows nothing about entertainment law." And I couldn't understand that. I said, "But that's okay. I want to meet him." He says, "Come to the Omni Hotel tomorrow. I want you to meet him." And I blurted out in innocence. I finally said, "Well, who is this guy? Who is this man that you want me to meet?" He says, "Well, it's James Brown." Well, in 1971, James Brown was the biggest star in the world. He was unbelievably tremendous. And I went to see him, and when I walked into the penthouse, Danny Ray, who was the comedian who opened all of his shows, I met him, and I met with Fred Davis, who I didn't recognize. He recognized me and introduced me to Danny, and then brought me in to see Mr. Brown, who was getting his hair done. And Mr. Brown took one look at me. I was in perfect costume. I was in a vested suit. I looked like a lawyer. I was trying to be real professional. I mean, I had no clients, so it was easy to be professionally looking. And he said to me, "You know, I'm going to hire you. You look like an interesting kind of guy. You're from New York. You live in the South. That's what I want." So, okay, he said, "Come with me to New York tomorrow. We got to go up there." I said, "Great." And on the way up to New York, and I remember it, we flew Eastern Airlines. And he said, "I'm going to make a contract with a brand new company that's just been formed, and I'm free. I don't have any contractual commitments, and I'm the only superstar that I know of in the world who's free." So I said, "Great, let's go do it." He said, "The company's brand new. It was a joint venture between Siemens, the German electronics manufacturer, and Philips, the Dutch electronics manufacturer. It was called Polydor. Polygram, Polydor." And so he gave me a list of all the things he wanted from the company to make this new deal for records. He wanted a jet plane. He wanted $5 million in 1971, which was an enormous amount of money. It's like walking in for $25 million today. And
stop for a second, because I'm thinking, you know, that movie, Show Me the Money. I can see you dancing, going, "I feel good."
Well, he did that a lot better than me, frankly. But we went up to New York, and he wanted to own his own masters. He wanted the copyrights back. So to make a long story short, after all the whining and entertaining of him that went on with the Polydor people, I finally sit down with the head lawyer, a fellow named Dr. Schnabel, Dr. Ecki Schnabel from Germany, and he says to me, "Okay, what do you want?" And I give him all these points. He looks at me and says, "Are you crazy? There's never been a deal ever made like this." And that's when I realized why James Brown selected me, because nobody would have ever asked for this stupidity that I was out there asking for, which shows how clever James was. And he was very clever. I represented him till the day he died, and he was very clever. And so what happened was I was about to leave. I said to him, "Well, thank you for the lunch, Mr. Brown, and I appreciate it." And I got up to leave, and he said, "Well, just wait a minute. Just stay here." So I stayed, and we had dinner, and we kind of started talking about a deal, and we got it moving, and I stayed another week because James asked me to stay in New York. I've never done a contract like that since, where we went over each line as we did it. We got the contract done. James signed it, the money was wired, and then we went to a press conference. I've never been to a press conference. I didn't even know what a press conference was back then. And I was seated at the last seat on a long dais table, because this was a big deal. This was the first signing for Polydor, which was a giant, it became a giant company. It was sold to Universal Music Group. And James does his thing, the president, Jerry Schoenbaum, does his thing, and James ends the discussion by saying, my lawyer is here, I want him to stand up. I stand up, I don't know what he's gonna say, and he says, this is the greatest entertainment lawyer in the world. And I don't know a thing, I don't know what's going on. I said, oh, great, great, and I leave, and as I leave, James hands me an envelope. We go to get his airplane, which he didn't get an airplane. He got the use of an airplane, but he got the same airplane, kind of like a NetJets, kind of an arrangement well before NetJets. And we flew home, and I looked at the check. It was for $50,000, and I said, wow.
That's when you said, I feel good.
I want to be, that's right. That's when I did my dance, getting off the plane. And I said, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And I went back to my office in Atlanta, put James Brown on a small retainer. I think it was about $2,000 a month. And I felt great because I'd done this contract. And then all of a sudden, these newspaper articles start coming out, you know, and the newspaper articles come out, and they talk about this giant contract, biggest contract ever done. They mention my name. This little lawyer in Atlanta did this contract. And I'm thinking, this is amazing stuff. And I get a phone call like 2 days after the article. A guy calls me up, he says, hey, do you know anything about country music? From New York City. I didn't know anything back in those days about country music. I said, no. He said, that's okay, you're the Godfather's lawyer, right? I said, yes, I am. I just did his deal. He said, I read all about it. It's fantastic. Come meet me in Austin, Texas. I'd never been to Austin. I flew to Austin because I had all this James Brown money, you know, that I'd made. I was feeling real wealthy at the moment. I never made more than 18 grand in my life. I just got a check in a year, and I just got a check for 50,000. I was feeling pretty good. And I went to Austin, Texas, to a Ramada Inn, knock on the door outside, one of them outside, you know, the rooms are outside. And I walk in, and there's smoke everywhere. What kind of smoke, I will not say in this room, but smoke.
Away who it is.
Smoke everywhere. And I say to this guy, I'm here to see Mr. Nelson. And he says, well, I'm Willie, you know, come on in. And I go in there, and no one ever heard of Willie Nelson back then. And he says, you know, I've written this really cool album, and I want to present it. CBS Records, which is now Sony, they want to sign me because they love this record. It's an allegorical tale of my life called The Red-Headed Stranger. And they're going to put it out, you know, and I want you to go do the deal for me, just like you did the James Brown deal. So we talked for about 3 hours, and I loved him. He was great. He was so smart. He was very electric kind of a human being. And I get up to leave. I'm getting ready to go to New York. We say we're going to do it. And he says, wait a minute. You didn't ask me for a retainer. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, every lawyer I ever met asked me for a retainer before they would even talk to me. I said, well, you know, I was feeling pretty good. I had the James Brown deal done. And I said, well, you know, because he didn't look like he could pay a retainer, and I didn't want to insult him. Frankly, in any way, I wasn't about to insult him. So he said, you know what? Why don't you spend the night in this hotel tonight? And I said, okay, I'll stay. And he took me to a studio, and that night I met Waylon Jennings, I met George Jones, Tammy Wynette, and I met Chris Christopherson. And they all became clients. I put them all on a $2,000 a month little retainer, and that's how I got in business. And then I was really an entertainment lawyer because they were stars. Willie was not a star, but they were big stars at the time.
Jimmy Buffett, Kenny Chesney, Sheryl Crow, Ronnie Dunn, Sammy Hagar, Julio Iglesias, Alan Jackson, Michael Jackson, mentioning the estates of Michael Jackson and George Jones, Chris Christopherson. I can go on. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Willie Nelson, Bear Paisley, Pitbull, George Strait, James Taylor, Justin Timberlake, the estate of Whitney Houston. Let's talk a little bit now about where it started, where it is today. I was talking to someone yesterday and mentioned that you and I were going to be having a conversation. And he said, well, if 500 people don't show up for that, that's less than the number of lawyers he's got working for him at the law firm. What do you do now? What kind of engagements are you involved in? And just what does it mean to be the titles that we talked about as far as the current relationship you have with Greenberg?
It's very different. I had my own firm, you know, and I sold it 16 years ago to Greenberg, and I went on their executive committee. There were 200 lawyers at Greenberg when I joined. I didn't want to be in a massive firm. And the goal that they had, Frank, was to basically expand. They were a Miami-based law firm. They were going to expand geographically all over the world and build offices. So for me, who is landlocked in Atlanta with an office, As they built a New York office out, I could put entertainment lawyers from New York in that office. As they built an LA office, I could put entertainment lawyers in that office. London, the same, all around the world, I could canvass the world with entertainment lawyers, and I wouldn't pick up any of the G&A. I would just pick up the costs of what the lawyers cost. And I had enough work so that I could keep those lawyers busy. So that was my goal, that was my theory. Well, that was 16 years ago, and I opened the Atlanta office. Well, the Atlanta office has about 110 lawyers, not entertainment, they do everything. We've got about 20 entertainment lawyers. And the Greenberg firm now has close to 2,000 lawyers, and we have 39 offices around the world. Entertainment, we have the largest entertainment practice, probably 3 times our nearest competitor. We have close to 80 entertainment lawyers all over the world who work. And our work is concentrated in a variety of different areas. What I run is called the Media and Entertainment Group. And we represent most of the cable companies and most of the large corporate entities. We have a big artist practice. We represent many of the employees and management who run a lot of the companies. We represent big institutions. We work with the Grammys. I'm the general counsel of the Recording Academy, the general counsel of the Country Music Association. We deal with Dick Clark Productions. We represent them, which is Guggenheim. We represent Guggenheim Partners. We represent Highbridge, which is J.C. Morgan. And we basically, J.P. Morgan, we basically win a lot of acquisition work, a lot of media and entertainment growth situations. So it's not just artistic. It's creating new ideas and building things. I once said to a young lawyer who said, well, what is your job really? I said, I'm kind of like an architect, basically building things in a room full of lawyers who get it done. And that's kind of the best way I could really say to you what my job is.
I heard somebody say once that it isn't Brad Pitt's or it isn't Cher or it isn't Justin Timberlake, that's a brand. I think it would be an understatement or maybe just hitting the mark to say maybe Joel Katz, as far as entertainment law is concerned in the entertainment industry, has really, really turned the evolutionary table from just being an attorney to literally being a brand.
I don't know if that's correct, but the thing that I'm the proudest of, I've been doing this for 44 years, and I've never done anything else. And that's what practicing law is about. You practice, you keep doing it, and you get better at it, and better at it, and better at it, and finally you look around and you think you really know what you're doing. And then you find something else and realize you better practice a little more. But that's really what makes it happen. But the thing I'm proudest of, everybody told me that I had to leave Atlanta to build this kind of a business. And they said, you can't do this. You can't be successful. How are you going to compete with these people in LA or New York City? And you can't compete. Well, we did compete. We built a much bigger business than anybody has in LA or New York. And we did it by getting a great group of people, really smart people who wanted to work harder, because that's what it's really about, working harder at something you really enjoy doing. And if you can do that, as I said in that video, my friend Al Sharpton, who was raised by James Brown, I know Al quite well for a long time, the tortoise wins every race. You just got to keep doing it. And if you keep doing it, you're going to beat everybody else. It's as simple as that.
What a great segue. You touched upon Atlanta. I think one of the things that the Technology Association, in a sense, being on the outside looking in the entertainment industry until, the epiphany, I guess, was when analog goes to digital and everything changes, and all of a sudden the entertainment industry becomes a metaphor for what's kind of forecasting what's going to happen in the entire technology industry and all of the other verticals. A lot of times I'll say it's the same thing, only different. If you look at the music, film, gaming, broadcast industries and how they all have been impacted vertically by that technology and then eventually horizontally are beginning to converge. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is that in that context, I mentioned in the opening that a lot of people kind of think that all of this happened over the last 3 to 5 years, in the tax incentive movement and those kind of things. And I think your analogy of the tortoise is one of the messages I think is really important for us to hear today, because there's a lot of us that are in the audience that are either pioneers within themselves that have been out in the vineyard for a lot of years, believing in that I can stay in Atlanta and I can still do this. And then a lot of young people who have just come on the scene who don't have that sense of identity in place to realize that we have had an industry of quite accomplishment for many, many decades. Kind of share a little bit about, you mentioned about the tortoise, and you mentioned about Atlanta, but tell us about how you feel about Atlanta now, then and now.
Well, it's been my home for 44 years, so obviously I like living here, but we have a great history here. I don't know if any of you have gone to or have supported the Georgia Music Hall of Fame.
Which you're a member of, 1995?
Yes, but that's great. But the point is that if you just pull out or go to the computer or take a look at who the members are, it'll blow your mind in terms of the artistic achievement that people in our state and our city have demonstrated throughout their careers and throughout the last 50 years in the state. And those are only the people who've been honored, you know? When I came here in the 70s, there was a gentleman who had built a business named Bill Lowry, and he had a company called Lowry Music Company, which was initially a publishing company. But then he developed a production company for music and had some stars and writers and singers and performers like Joe South and Billy Joe Royal and the Classics Four. And he built a marvelous business around that. And then I was introduced by my friend, a manager named Irving Azoff, to two guys from Cincinnati, you know, Antonio Reed and Kenny Edmonds, better known to those who really know them as L.A. Reid and Babyface. And they started a company here called La Face. And that company was based in Atlanta for a while, and I had the opportunity to work with them, and I sold the company to Bertelsmann for them. And they basically, L.A. went on to work. He's now the chairman of Epic Records, which is a Sony business. And Dallas Austin built DARP. There were people like Little John, people like CeeLo, people like Goody Mob, people like Outkast. There are guys running around doing great things here like Shaka Zulu, like Jason Jeter, people who we know very well and work well with, who are really smart people and are trying to build their businesses and get them in the sense of what's going on, and doing a really good job, and they're committed to living here. And I have to say that our mayor, who I have the privilege of knowing fairly well, because he's a real music kind of a guy, he's really into growth in music and wanting to see the city and the state develop into music with the combination of technology. You know, content and technology, that marriage, I don't know if it's a marriage, but that relationship has been a rocky road globally for a long time. I represented Nokia for many, many years when it was owned by the Finns. Now it's owned by Microsoft. We represent Microsoft, but I don't represent Nokia in the phone area. We represent Samsung now. But I watched what was going on between tech companies and content companies right after the internet, and when ISPs were attempting to lure subscribers to them by promising file sharing and free music, and how weird it became, the relationships between content companies and technology companies. But in the last 5 years, that's changed, and it's really starting to build. It's really been a sense of better relationships between the major content owning companies and the newer technology companies, which have made streaming of music a real business, and even downloading of music with new patents that are being conceived and new concepts that are going to be out in the next 2 to 3 years, and even maybe some legislation which would help on a national basis, not even on a state basis, but on a national basis, could bring the content owner and the technology provider much better together.
We're unfortunately quickly running out of time, but one of the things that, and you just touched on it, give us a sense of your opinion on where the industry is going in general and where Atlanta is going to play a role in that evolution.
It's all about creativity. You know, somebody once said to me, why don't you come over to this place? There's a guy who's fantastic who performs Elton John songs, and you're just gonna, we represent Bernie Taupin, and you're just gonna love hearing these songs. And I thought about that. I said, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in seeing Elton John sing Elton John songs, because what entertainment is about is that genius or that brilliance, which is really based upon originality. And you cannot ever deal with originality, because whoever is the creator, I mean, look at what Lady Gaga does. Look at what Justin Timberlake does. Look at what Taylor Swift did. Whether you like the music is irrelevant. It's original. It's unique. It's different. And that's what has to happen. Atlanta is a growing community. It's always been growing. It's very difficult for Atlanta to get to a level of New York, LA, or Nashville, but it doesn't have to be. That's the beauty of it. The beauty of it is so many artists just plain love living here, because we have a very, very good temperament of city government, state government, municipal government that really tries to help. I think the passage of the various entertainment laws that have come forth from tax savings have been helpful. We know what's going on in North Carolina. I worked on the first law there was of any real significance, which was the Louisiana law. And that's what most of these things are modeled on, which is probably the farthest of any law. And we moved in Georgia, the people who have really moved it forward. I mean, I had meetings with the governor. We had meetings with the lieutenant governor to try to move this. It's very, very important, because creativity is so important to preserve in your state. And by the way, technology is the same thing. Yeah. It's created by very creative people. So I don't think there's any difference between Willie Nelson and Bill Gates. These are both extremely creative. By the way, they're very good friends. Willie Nelson played at Bill Gates' wedding. That's how I met Bill Gates. And
but I guess Bill never inhaled.
No comment.
Well,
no comment.
Well, unfortunately, again, we're quickly running out of time. We've got a little surprise for you. And
okay.
Not only do we intend to have our conversation, but we've actually established an award recognition that we intend to carry on annually from this summit on, called the Icons of Industry. And I'd like to invite Audra Browning, our chairman, to come up to make a presentation. So if you'll join us for a second.
Sure.
Audra, if you will.
We are honored to have you as our first recipient of this award, and you have helped with putting Atlanta on the map, I think.
Well, thank you.
If you agree with me in what Joel said about original, and you think he's an original, stand up and show him. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.